Hi, so in this video I'd like to tell you about my journey from becoming a hobbyist photographer and charging like hardly any money, like $100 per wedding, to becoming a full-time photographer and averaging over $3,000 per session and over six figures, multiple six figures per annum. So if you're new to the channel, my name is Richard. Like I said, I'm a full-time photographer. I own a studio in Australia here with my wife, Tracy, and we specialize in boudoir photography. So if you're interested, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about my personal backstory, about how my journey to becoming a photographer. It may or may not be familiar, but I'd just like to cover that just to give a bit of context. And then towards the end, I'd like to talk about, I guess, how I would suggest if you're interested in becoming a full-time photographer, I think the best way to go about doing it. So the first thing is, my history was not in photography. I didn't really know anything about it. In fact, my history was, if I had a trade, I'm actually a professional musician. That's what I was trained in. But outside of that, my history was essentially in small business. First business I had was an IT business, which I developed and sold for a good amount of money. Excuse me. And then the second business I had for 14 years was I owned a pawnbroker's shop. Now, what I mean by that is not pornography. I mean like money lending and spying and selling of goods and all that type of thing. And that was a tremendous business as well. The way that I got into photography was that I actually bought a camera through the process of being a pawnbroker. And ironically, at a garage sale, I just happened to drop in on the way from somewhere else. And this guy was selling a Canon 5D Mark II with a 24-70 lens. I thought, that looks pretty good. And so I purchased that. And because I was after a new hobby, because I spent my whole time being in business. And so I thought I was always interested in photography, but I'd never really got into it seriously. So then in an effort to get good at photography and understand the technicalities of it, I signed up to that online service, Creative Live. And on there I learned about how the settings of the camera worked. I learned all that type of stuff. I learned how to use flashes and strobes and studio lights and all that type of thing. And in there, I stumbled across a course by Sal Carter, who is quite a big name in the industry and has gotten even bigger now. I think he's now an explorer of light. And he had this video called the Wedding Photography Bootcamp, which I thought was a weird title for a video. Now, just to put it in context, I had no desire to make money from this, like none at all. I just wanted to do something different, learn something new, get away from my hobby, which was music, because I was kind of a little bit sick of that. And I actually said, I'll never charge for this. And to be truthful, I couldn't see how you could make money from this. It's not good money anyway, not money that made it worthwhile in pursuing as a business. But anyway, I watched this course by Sal Carter, and it kind of intrigued me, and he obviously had done really well. And so I thought, okay. So I thought, maybe I'll just start shooting some weddings as a way of, and to be truthful, the whole reason I wanted to shoot weddings was just to get better at photography, because I thought then, and I still think now actually, that it's probably the hardest genre to do really well, because you're doing all sorts of things. You're doing like still life, you're doing individual shots of things like rings and dresses and that type of thing. You have to be able to wrangle people. You have to be able to do basically do everything. Now, what also happened along the way is in addition to learning photography, I actually started a Facebook page called Humans on the Sunshine Coast, which is where I'm from. And it was obviously a direct rip-off of Brendan Stanton's wildly successful Facebook page, Humans of New York. And I would just wander around photographing people, interviewing them, and it was quite a successful page actually. I had, when I stopped it, I was up to I think 11,000 subscribers, and I really enjoyed that. And so I thought, why not do some weddings? Like, why not challenge myself and get better at photography? So I put an ad on that page that I had, the Humans on the Sunshine Coast page, advertising myself essentially doing a wedding for free. I said, I'll do you a whole wedding and charge you $100. And I didn't want the $100. I just wanted to just cover my fuel costs, really. I was happy to do it for free. And so I did a few weddings, and that went well. And then from there, I started booking more weddings. The word got around. I still wasn't charging enough. And then I thought, maybe if I do like, 20 a year or something like that, that would be kind of cool. I could maybe make like, $40,000 extra a year. I could put it towards more gear and things like that. But again, like I said, honestly, it wasn't about the money for me. It was a way of connecting with people and humanity again, because remembering the type of business I was in, which was pawnbroking, it wasn't necessarily a happy place day to day. And what I mean by that is that people generally will go and get loans or sell their stuff at pawnbrokers because they're in a bad situation. And that's not to say they're bad people. I met some fantastic people. They're really good people. But all I'm sort of getting at is it's not the happiest place in the universe. Okay, so I'll just put it like that. And then what happened was I got a friend of mine who's a very talented pet photographer, a guy called Paul Taddy in Melbourne. He's told me about this podcast called Photobiz X, run by an Australian guy called Andrew Helmich. And he suggested that I subscribe to his podcast, which is a paid podcast, which is no money, by the way. And I strongly suggest anyone watching this, go and join his premium version of his podcast. It's the best money you'll spend. Anyway, I joined his podcast and I started listening to these interviews with different photographers who had portrait studios and different coaches and things like that. I thought, wow, this is a whole thing I didn't know about. So from there, I met a coach, a fellow called Steve Saporito. Steve Saporito is kind of famous for helping people with studios. I started renting a studio from a photographer and doing like portraits and selling them, doing same day in-person sales, which was a lot of fun. Then I joined Steve's educational platform, which has now ceased to exist, unfortunately. But anyway, I joined his educational platform and I started meeting other photographers, hearing stories. And I started hearing about these people. They're making like between $600,000 and $900,000 a year. So, oh my God, this is fucking incredible. So I thought, right, well, maybe there's something in this. Maybe there is a way to do this. And so I took a leap of faith and I leased a studio. And I said to my wife, Tracy, I said, look, you run the pawnbrokers. I'm going to go investigate this photography business and open a studio. I started following Steve's teachings and all that type of thing. Started advertising, getting people in the door. And it started to really pick up steam. And so then we had to make the decision, what do we do with the pawnbrokers, right? So I said, look, why don't we just shut it down? It was kind of, if I was being truthful, it was kind of stagnating anyway. It wasn't really a growing business. It became more and more competitive. Like more and more people were buying and selling gold. There were more and more like online money lenders. I was competing with cash converters, which is the big one over here. It was fine. It was making money, and I employed people. It was fine. I couldn't see the way things were going with, especially with Facebook Marketplace as well. I couldn't see it growing much more than what it was. So we made the decision, rather than sell it, which is what I'd done with my previous business, I decided just to wind it down. And what I mean by wind it down was, we just started selling off the stock. We got the loans in. And to be truthful, we kind of probably made the same amount of money by doing that than if I'd have gone through the pain of selling it. So it was a pragmatic decision to do that. And we'd done our time there. And I think we'd probably been in it a little bit too long as well, because we're a little bit jaded. So we went into owning a studio full on, and that was great. And then along the way, we had to shut down our studio that we were leasing, because it got the land that the studio was on was resumed by the local council, because they were widening the main road, because our studio was on the main road. And we got reimbursed for that, and that was fine. And that was during COVID. And then we couldn't find anywhere to lease because there was a shortage of places to lease. And so we built this place here, which I might do a video about one time if anyone wants to hear about it, about how we built a purpose-built studio. And since then, the business has grown. We decided to niche down even further. And like I said at the beginning, we specialize in boudoir now. And by getting better at this a little bit each day, we now average over $3,000 a client. And it's fabulous. But obviously it didn't happen overnight. It took a little while, to get those averages up. And so I guess I tell that story, I guess, to try and give people hope that I came from like not knowing anything about photography in my 40s. Like I started my first wedding, that $100 wedding that I mentioned, was in 2017, and I was 49 years old at the time. So I was starting this really, really late. I was a really, really late bloomer. And so I guess what I'm alluding to is that it can be done. You can do this. And if people were to ask me advice on how to do it, my strongest piece of advice would be is to pay the money and get a coach. Now, I do coaching. Now, I'm not making this video to try and get new clients, and I really mean that. At the time of this recording, I have 3 clients now that I coach for, and I do them one-on-one, and I haven't got time for any more because we do this as well. My long-term goal and why I make these videos, to be truthful, is I've got visions of becoming a full-time coach into my 60s. Okay, so I sort of, that's what I sort of see myself as kind of retiring, I guess, and then having, coaching people in business. And it doesn't have to be photography. I've actually coached people outside of photography as well in the past. I've been a mentor and things like that. But at the moment, I've got 3 photographers who I'm helping, and that's enough. But honestly, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to have a quick discussion with anyone, and that honestly doesn't bother me. But the reason I bring all that up is I would strongly suggest that you get a coach and try not to figure out how to do this on your own. I really mean that. And the reason I say that is because a coach, a good business coach or a good business mentor or a good photography coach, mentor, whatever you want to call them, is they will basically save you years and years of time and pain. And that's what any good business coach will do. One of my great, it's not a regret, but what I wish was available to me when I first started in business in my 20s, there wasn't a real coaching culture at all. You know what I mean? Like that just sort of wasn't really a thing. And you kind of just sort of figured it out yourself as you went along. And where I was really lucky, and I mean this, I was really lucky, I had clients in my computer clients who were a lot older than me, who took it upon themselves to take me under their wing a bit. I had a fellow who was a lawyer, who became like an uncle, I guess, and he would coach me. I had an accountant that was a big influence on me. A few other people that were like informal mentors, and I think that they just liked helping a young guy out. I was in my 20s back then when I was doing it. So that would be my strong suggestion. I would look into getting into the world of portraiture. I would join Andrew's podcast that I mentioned for sure. I would definitely join that. It's really cheap and the best money you'll spend. My big takeaway would be, don't try and do this alone. Try and get help. Try and get help from a coach or a peer group of people who might be able to help you along the way. I think this is just too difficult to figure out on your own. It would take, if I had tried to do this on my own, I reckon it would have taken me 10 years to figure out, and not like 12 to 18 months to figure out. And that's what getting someone who can help you can do. So that would be my suggestion, is to do that. So that's it. That was my journey into becoming a professional full-time photographer. I hope you got something out of this. If you did get something out of it, I'd love you to subscribe to the channel, or if you already are subscribed to the channel, I'd really like you to like the video. Apparently that really helps. I plan on doing one of these every week, and I hope you got something out of it. Until then, thank you for watching the video. I really appreciate it. You're awesome, and I look forward to seeing the next video. Thank you for watching.